All of these clips that you're seeing now were shot handheld on the Blackmagic Pocket 6K without the use of a Steadicam or a gimbal. The footage was stabilized in DaVinci Resolve using the gyro metadata captured in 6K B-RAW. This has been a feature of Blackmagic cameras for a while now, but I wanted to make a quick video showing how I incorporate gyro stabilization into my workflow, especially as a solo wedding filmmaker. For the last few years, this has been the setup I've been using to shoot weddings. It's a Blackmagic Pocket 6K rig with a Sigma 18-35 as the primary lens, and to keep me from getting tired, and also because I live in Ontario where the cost of living is insanely high, I use the Flycam Flowline Master, which is basically the budget version of an ezrig. So quick side note, but I've never actually used a real ezrig before, so I'm not really sure what it is I'm missing out on, but this Flycam has been a really solid investment. And honestly, it's probably one of my favorite pieces of gear that I've ever owned. So shout out to them for making an awesome product at a pretty affordable price. This has been a pretty solid setup for me when I'm shooting handheld, but what do I do when I want a smooth moving cinematic gimbal shot? So you could apply gyro stabilization to any clip, but if you're setting up for one of those walking, gliding shots, you need to change the shutter angle to 90. Luckily, this can be done using the camera's top buttons and not the touch screen, so it saves you from having to go into the menu and fiddle around that way. This change really only takes a few seconds, so once you adjust your ND or your aperture to compensate for the exposure, then you're all set. This works way better at a higher shutter speed too, so I recommend doing this when shooting at 50 or 60 frames per second. And you know that budget ezrig that I mentioned? Well, I actually take it off during these shots because wearing one adds a lot more bounce to the Z-axis, which is really hard to get rid of. Then it's just a matter of walking as smoothly as I can. So this is what the footage looks like before stabilization is applied. And obviously it looks pretty bad. But once gyro stabilization is applied, it looks way different, as you could see in these examples. The biggest drawback to this method that I found though is that I'll never actually know if the clip will look good until I'm editing and I see the stabilization effect applied. 9 times out of 10, the shot comes out pretty much how I want it, but I'll get a dud every once in a while, so it's best to practice and get a feel for it so you know what to expect. And obviously having a dedicated gimbal is the way to go, not just because it's more reliable, but because you can stabilize shots at different focal lengths. In my experience, the Blackmagic gyro stabilization really only works like a gimbal when you are shooting at a much wider angle. So obviously it's not going to look as good as it would if you did use a gimbal, but considering that I'm using no other piece of gear and the footage looked pretty shaky before, it's honestly pretty impressive just what that feature can do. Hopefully this video is helpful for anybody looking at how to stabilize their B-RAW footage and get the most from their Blackmagic camera.